Like, the movie sucks. Right? The movie is a terrible fucking movie. But you struggled through that strictly because of the car.
I'm still pretty well convinced that the Cars movie is actually more accurate to NASCAR than both Days of Thunder or Talladega Nights. The cop was confused because he's like, I know your truck. I've seen it. You got all that hydraulic, electric. I'm like,
can you help me?
I'm like, I don't have doing this. I was like, I don't have anything. It's just a beat up old truck.
Welcome to Oil and Whiskey, an Ironclad original. Today's guest, in person, the best type, Matt Swiderski. Crew chief, Daniel Suárez, Trackhouse Racing. And because I guess you still had some soul left with being in NASCAR, you're like, you know what? Let's see if building cars can take what's left of my soul.
I don't know about soul. It sounds like there must be a ton of money in NASCAR and you needed to get rid of it. So you're figuring, you know what I'll do? I'm going to get into the hot rod business.
I had that real estate deal on the side, so I had to get rid of some of that money.
Yeah.
Oh, we got,
Oh, sweet.
hell yeah.
Damn, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Banger. Thanks, dude.
No problem.
Appreciate you bringing that out.
In-person guests are the greatest in-person guests that bring whiskey are even better than
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a little bit of a run here where we've been all Zoom calls, which, you know, they're all right.
If you got to, you got to. But if you can do it in person, they're always that much better. I was doing some rearranging, and I moved the other foregate over there, and I was like, man, we need to have some more of that. What are the odds?
Yeah, that's a hell of a good bottle. Thanks, you a bourbon drinker?
A little bit. I dabble a little bit.
Yeah, we only do a little.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like.
Yeah, I feel like
have here.
I gave my liver a little rest here. It's been a minute since I've been sucking down any bourbon.
Really?
Yeah.
We also,
And you come bearing gifts.
Yeah.
Dude, this is phenomenal.
I know. This is super cool. It's like we're opening birthday presents with the guests.
It's like Christmas. I love it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, sweet, man. That's a cool little hot rod there.
Yeah, so that one's from the Indy win in 2021.
Yeah.
And then that one's the Charlotte Roval win in 23.
The Roval win.
Yep.
So those commemorate the victory. Huh?
Yep. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
We'll keep these in. Right there in the shot. Look at that. Look at that branding, marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This means hundreds of thousands of people will now see that. Yeah. Go worldwide.
Really?
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands?
Damn right. Damn right. Well, I'm going to pour this. Then
Pour it up.
And then we'll get started.
Pour it up. All right. Well, we've been talking a little bit and getting to know each other. This is the first time in person. And I think we're super excited to hear about the NASCAR story and then, transition into a hot rod shop owner. You've got a couple chassis on order. We're doing kind of the first one is pretty damn cool because we've talked about doing some cool wagons and stuff before, but a 67 Vista Cruiser is...
That's a hell of a cool
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I always wonder why we don't get those builds, We see all these cool cars come through for chassis scans, that being one of them. And they just show up, right? So you're walking out of the showroom, and you're like, man, a Vista Cruiser. Oh, that's badass.
Yeah.
And who's doing that?
And when he sent me the email, he's like, have you ever done one for a Vista Cruiser? I was like, nope, but we absolutely want to.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I was convinced it'd be the same as a Chevelle, but
It was, except the longer part.
yeah.
In the middle,
It was
of the back,
it was the
in
same.
the front. Is it? Oh, do they share anything with?
Yeah, it's
So it's
almost
an
like
A-body style chassis.
it's like split in the middle longer.
Okay.
Like it's pretty much all Chevelle from like back of front seat forward,
Yeah.
and then they basically like add up into the rear because the wheelbase is like what was it?
It was 120. It was like 5 inches longer,
Yeah.
I think.
And then it overhangs a little longer in the rear. It's,
What's wrong with the S10 chassis? I mean,
S10,
generally that's pretty
it's
universal,
universal.
right? Well, that's all. What kind of customer seeks you out and has a Vista Cruiser? Is that like a nostalgic thing? I grew up in the back of a Vista Cruiser. We toured the country.
Yeah, so they
got kidnapped in a Vista Cruiser.
I guess they grew up and had a Cutlass, or their dad had a Cutlass growing up, and kind of always was an Oldsmobile person. But they want wanted a hot rod that could fit 9 people in. So the Vista was kind of about the only one on the table.
Sweet. Yeah, that's bitching. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Fire away. I'm just curious. I'm dwelling. I'm hung on the Vista Cruiser.
Let's keep talking about the Vista Cruiser.
What's the power plant? What's going down with it?
So it's a L8T out of a brand new 3500 express van.
Okay.
The customer actually got the powertrain. Like a van fell off a train in Detroit, and so they pulled the motor and trans out, and that's what they sent down for it.
Did he know somebody that made it fall off the train?
I didn't ask too many questions. I didn't need to know.
Sounds suspicious.
If something falls off of a train or a truck and the guy says he has it, you don't ask any more questions.
I think I got a Samsung TV like that.
You didn't ask how he got it. You just said, "Oh, cool,
it's cheap though." Yeah. Great deal. Oh, that's cool.
So, super interested in a lot about Squid's Hot Rod Shop. Super interested about Trackhouse, but more importantly, like you've had a pretty long career in NASCAR. And one, I want to hear. I'm always curious. We've had some great guests on here. Always curious of like how that happens, and it's generally not at all what you expect and how it happens. And I love that story. And then let's get into what you're doing.
Yeah. So. In high school, I was, already dabbling in cars, and me and my buddy, I was convinced I wanted to build a drag car. I was going to do like NMCA stuff.
And you're from here, right? You're from Chicago.
Yeah, south side of Chicago. And then I realized that drag racing's like insanely expensive, and like the lower level circle track stuff, you basically bash the windows out and you just go to it. So we kind of scrapped the drag racing thing and built a street stock, and did that for a couple of years, progressed from there to super late models and kind of raced all around this area while I was still going to engineering school. So it was always kind of the plan to get into racing at that point. I just wasn't sure it would be circle track racing at that.
That's a crazy thing to get into growing up on the south side of Chicago. And what sparks that? Like, how do you start that interest? Where's it come from?
I mean, I'd always been into cars, but my buddy had an uncle who did enduros, and we used to call him, it was his drunkle, because he would,
Drunkle Mike?
Yeah, if he sobered up, we'd make it to the racetrack. If not, he'd pass out, and we'd work on the car while he passed out. But kind of followed him around for a little bit and kind of tried to learn from him. But eventually, even as high school kids, we thought we could be more serious than him. So we found a old beat up Monte Carlo and turned that into our first street stock.
Yeah, when I hear south side of Chicago and we talk about cars, I just think of stealing cars. Like that would be, to me, where my mind would go. Like, what do you do on the south side of Chicago that sends your cars? Hey, you fucking steal them.
Yeah.
At that point, too, I mean, like you said, I mean, cost was a factor, but there's also that mentality of like, well, probably got enough power. This is a driver and a tire thing. Like, let's get some tires, and if we can drive good enough, we can be competitive.
Yeah, you could be the difference maker in that. And I made a conscious decision too. Like when we were deciding who was going to drive, I was like, well, I could try and drive it, but I'm probably not going to make a career out of that. But if I figure out how to work on it and let him drive it, maybe I can make a career out of that. And
what age is this?
This is like senior year in high school, around there.
It's like some pretty deep thinking.
Yeah.
Versus being like,
so you think that's like starting a band and you like opt to be the drummer. You think everybody that starts the band, you want to be the lead singer.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you're the producer and he's doing the mixing and
yeah, I suppose.
That's deep. Like you said, am I going to be good enough to make a living at being a driver? But I could be good enough.
Yeah.
You could work how to make this dumbass faster.
Yeah, you could figure that out. That's something you could learn, I think.
So where does it go from there? So you start doing that, you're running around circle track. So you say in this area, that's Midwest? That's what, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana?
Yeah, a lot of Wisconsin, up in Michigan a little bit. Indiana was where most of them were. Out to Rockford out here.
What was your favorite track?
Home base was Ileana. I'd say that's probably one of the favorites. That or Slinger. Slinger is pretty amazing.
Don't they race up at Wilmot in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, circle track stuff.
I think we need to start going to some local short track racing.
Yeah.
I have, of course, been to some of the greatest races in the South, but you need to experience.
I'll tell you what.
I've never been Midwest.
Wisconsin, I don't think the crowd's that much. You might be shocked
how close it is.
Yeah, or surprisingly like better in the South than a Wisconsin small track, circle track crowd. You'd know better than I would.
The super late miles in Wisconsin are no joke. You used to go to Madison and there'd be over 100 cars trying to qualify for a race. Like, it was insane. Like full semi 18-wheeler rigs in there for super late miles.
It's like the snowball today.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you, I need to take you down to some. You just need a little redneck in your life.
I do. I absolutely do. You know, we've done a lot of NASCAR stuff on here, and I'm a Yankee. You know, and I'm not a huge. I mean, I like NASCAR. I appreciate NASCAR. I know a little bit about it, but not to the level of Josh. Josh, like with his Bobby Allison stories and stuff, like he's raised. They breed them down there for this. You know,
not Alabama gang, man.
Yeah, yeah. Up here, they're like, you know, go to school, then you go to college, then you get like a desk job. You know.
Well, the fun. I mean, you got like Sayre. You had BIR, which is Birmingham International Raceway. It's no longer there, but that was, you know, cool little asphalt short track. But the cool shit was, you go to Talladega short track, which is dirt track, still is, on Talladega, like big race weekend, and you've got like Tony Stewart, and you're like through the chain link fence watching them run dirt cars, you know, on Thursday night before. That's a fun fucking time, because the intermingling of professional NASCAR drivers that can come across the street, race with the guys that are the track heroes, intermixed with the guys that got a Prevost that won't come and watch the race that are there, that also intermix with the other local fans. It's
how's that? I'm curious how that dynamic works. And again, it's like, excuse me that I'm a little, you know, naive with this stuff. I don't have a tremendous understanding, but a guy like Tony Stewart goes out there, and you got like track hero fucking Johnny Lightning. How often does that track hero whoop Tony Stewart's ass? Does it happen, or is it the big?
It happens, but it's rare, but it does happen. There's been a few cases of that, but I mean, the professionals are there
to show how professional they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't just show up in like whatever hand-me-down car. I mean, they're there to.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, the equipment's definitely probably level up.
Yeah.
Right?
It's such great when you, especially when you're doing what we're doing for so long, you see the, like, so much of like, man, let's get back to the roots. Let's go and have some fun. But if we're going to do it, we also we've got a certain reputation, right? So we're going to show up looking a certain way, right? The guys are going to dress a certain way. The truck's going to look a certain way. That's why I've always been so intrigued, specifically with NASCAR on that racing side, because even down to the short track stuff, it's been so much about the winning is so important, but there's also how you look winning. And it's from a young age, like they did best looking car contests, like, and all that was that's still a thing. You go to these short tracks, so you have pride in, even if they're busting the windows out, like you're saying, you're busting the windows out, but you're gonna try to put a cool paint job. Or, you know, back then it was actual paint, now it's wraps and stuff like that. But there's that, like, I might not be the fastest one, I guarantee that thing's fucking good looking, you know. And that, I don't know, that's why I've always been like super intrigued on. And you see it in NASCAR today. You see the individual personalization of stuff. That's why I love Davey Allison so much. Those fucking chrome wheels. Chrome wheels made him so much faster. That thing looked awesome.
Yeah, our first street stock, like I was dead set it was gonna be the best looking car there. So, and I was I was just a kid in high school, didn't know any better, and bought the old Eastwood at home powder coating kit. I'm like, I'm gonna powder coat the car. Like, we'll just powder coat the whole thing. So I had like a heat lamp, about a 12 by 12 heat lamp, the at home powder coat kit. Got the anodized blue powder coat, and stayed up to about 4 a.m. one night and got the trunk done. And about that time, like, all the flies and bugs started landing it and tumbling around. I got out the rattle cans and finished the rest of it. So.
He had a candy blue, anodized blue.
The deck plate was nice though.
Yeah. So you're running all this through the stuff. What's the next progression? You're going to school, engineering. Where are you going?
So I went to Kettering University. Used to be General Motors Institute, and I'd chosen that school because I before I got into racing, I was like, man, I want to be the next Zorakis Duntov or Bill Mitchell, or I want to design the Corvette. So I went to engineering school, but then I got really scared that, like, what if I only design the door handle for the Corvette, or something? You know, like, I don't want to get stuck doing something like that. So,
or the lock cylinder for it. You never know how much they break that stuff up.
But So I was going to school. We had to have an internship, so I was working at Illinois Tool Works over in Glenview doing machine design work and had a pretty good gig there. And when I graduated, they offered me a job, but it was contingent on me quitting racing because they wanted me to focus on the job there. And I thought about it, told them no, I wasn't going to give it up. I was going to stick with it. But they ended up bringing me back on for some contract work here and there. But they gave me a whole speech about, you'll never make any money in it. You'll never make it. It's just a hobby. But I started finding ways that I could add to my resume besides just having a college education. So I went to Lincoln Electric and took welding classes there. We used Pi data acquisition systems, went and learned about that stuff and started meeting the right people where, a couple of years out of college, I got a call from Chris Hussey, who had taken over the engineering department at Richard Childress Racing, and basically called to have me move down there and start in the engineering group. So had a gig ready to go before I even moved down there.
So you get a call from RCR. That's obviously fucking awesome. You're like, great, I'm in NASCAR.
Yeah.
What's the first thing? What are you tasked with?
So back then we could test anywhere. Pretty much there was no restrictions on testing. So I was the data acquisition engineer. So I'd go with the car every time we went to a test, and we went, I think I counted 186 days on the road that year, just traveling different tracks. Some of it was driver development. Some of it was a new chassis, new engine design, something. But just did that, followed that everywhere. And that kind of leads into becoming a race engineer, which it's kind of like an assistant to the crew chief, the way it works now, running simulation, managing all the note taking, that sort of stuff. But back in those days, there wasn't as much simulation. If you wanted simulation, you kind of had to write it yourself. So I started dabbling in that, writing simulation for the 29 team at that point when I was on Harvick Steel, and did that for a while up until 2011. I quit at RCR and decided I wanted to get out of racing, was sick of traveling, and went to SpaceX for a year.
For a year?
Yeah.
Which short run.
Which was weird because my daughter was born while we were out there, so she's got a California birth certificate, which makes no sense because me and my wife are both from here, so it's just it's weird. And she only lived there till she was 4 weeks, and then we strapped her in a Volkswagen and drove cross country with her. So.
Was it California that was the deterrent, or was it the job?
There were things I liked about California, but there were, it was a hard place to live. Weather was good. Yeah. I could deal with that, but I was, struggling to do anything, have a place to even work on a car, own any property. Starter homes were insanely expensive. Oh, yeah.
The thought of having a garage big enough to work on something. You got to basically be like a billionaire, I think, in California.
Yeah.
Have
but
anything more than
nice.
Than
70 degrees.
Then you work on it on the driveway, I suppose.
Yeah. So that didn't take.
No, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did it because it kind of taught me how much I missed the competition side of racing and missed cars and being around in racing, at the end of the week, the race pretty much tells you how you did. You get kicked in the dick or you did okay. Yeah. It's pretty clear, blunt feedback. And,
very final.
Yeah. So, and SpaceX is a fast-paced company, but it's still months and months of work on one little project.
What place did I come in?
It didn't explode, so that's a win, I guess.
What do you do? I was curious because it's such a massive company. You've got probably tens of thousands of employees. What are you doing there at SpaceX? Is it
so? I interviewed. The way I got into SpaceX is I interviewed. I just started looking on their website for engineers that they needed, and I found one that was like a data acquisition job. I said, "Well, I've done it on race cars. I could probably do it on a rocket. It can't be that different." So I interviewed for that. But they decided to put me in the dynamics group instead. So in their kind of simulation department. And they had probably about 10 people in our group. And most of them calculated the forces on the rocket as the rocket's going up. But because I wasn't really an aerospace guy, they kind of used me for the oddball project. So one of the things I did was all the simulation work for how they transport the rocket down the road and how the bumps, because the rocket laying horizontally on the road sees different load paths than it sees vertically. But the cool thing I got to work on is they kind of just gave me the rocket landing simulation as a project because there was no aerospace standard on how to do it. So it was like, just go figure this out and work on it. So worked on that for a while. And then at that time, they just had the Grasshopper rocket. So they were just starting to learn that stuff, but got to write all the simulation code for that.
That's cool.
And
That's you talked about like calculating the load forces of transporting, and I was like, and you were afraid that you were going to do like the door handle. So it sounded like you got into.
yeah.
But yeah, the landing shit definitely would have been, because still to this day, that's the shit that like nobody else has been able to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. It was scary when they first came to me with the project, like how little they knew about it, but it was just like, well, we're just going to work on it till we figure it out.
This is the idea,
yeah,
right?
You know, we're just make a step forward and then see where we get to and make another step forward. So, but there was nobody that had like this big grand plan of this is how it's going to work.
How do they pitch that of like, hey, we're going to like turn the rocket around and land it?
So it seems like Elon pretty much just comes up with however he wants it to happen and then just tells people.
Oh yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where you'd even begin trying to figure that out.
Yeah, the whole entire government with all of their tax dollars, we still had to like send a plane up in like to out the and then like launch a rocket there, and then it was gone. You just get like the little tip of it.
Well, the government's involved, so you put that,
Yeah,
Elon's hands, he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's nuts. How was your wife through this transition? Was she all in? Where you're like, hey, I know we just moved, but guess what? We're going back to racing. Did she look and be like, I knew you would?
I think she probably knew, but she was fine with it. She, like I think I made it 3 months or so without even turning a race on. And I remember it was the Coke 600, and I turned it on, and that day she knew. She's like, I'll start looking at houses.
We're going back.
Son of a bitch is watching racing again.
Yeah.
Pack her bags.
Before we get, you said something about racing, testing when you were with RCR, and that many days on the road. Did y'all test like new chassis stuff, whatever, like on race weekend, like earlier in the week, or is this midweek stuff?
Midweek stuff usually. There were a few times where they would keep us over, like you'd race Sunday and then you'd stay and test Monday, Tuesday because the track's all rubbered in.
Yep.
But most of the time it was several months before a race. You'd go out there and do a 2 or 3 day test out there.
Gotcha. So, you want to get back into racing. You want to leave SpaceX, right? You want the competitive stuff back. You just call your buddies up that are back there and be like, hey, I want to get back in it?
So Mike Dillon, who's the son-in-law of Richard Childress, and Kevin Harvick were the ones that kind of recruited me to come back and kept saying there was an opening to come back. And so they hired me back as a chief race engineer. So I was basically managing the race engineering group. And it was really just good timing if somebody had just left that position just about the time that I decided I really wanted to get back into it.
That's peak Harvick days.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a race engineer on Harvick's car in 2010 and 2011. And in 2012, I went to SpaceX, and he hadn't won a race all year. And I came back for the last 3 races of the year as the chief race engineer. And I filled in as a race engineer for the last 3 races, and we went and won Phoenix there. So like it was the second race in, I was like, I should just quit again while I'm up. Like,
Go down in infamy.
I always said,
You guys call me up when you need some help.
yeah, I'll be back in a year.
Phone call away, fellas.
Yeah, every time we have a good race or win, it's always like, I should just quit while you're ahead right now, because come next Sunday you're back to a loser again.
So that just snowballs then?
Yeah, so RCR started really investing in the engineering group. We started writing our own in-house sim tools, and they started building, they called it a vehicle performance group. So I became head of the vehicle performance group, which was in charge of race engineering, simulation, race strategy tools. We had all kinds of projects where I'd fly to Italy to work with one company on simulation tools, and did that up until about 2016. It wasn't close enough to the racing. Like I was working for a race team, but I wasn't directly part of a race team. And I'd always battled with the decision on, do I want to be a technical director at the race team, or do I want to be a crew chief at the race team? I'd kind of given up on the crew chief thing because I'd just accidentally fallen so far into the engineering path. but they had some new drivers coming up at RCR, and I was like, well, now's the chance. I'm going to tell them, throw my hat in the ring. Like, I want to be considered for a crew chief position. So end of 2016, at the last race of the year at Homestead, they let me crew chief one car, and I think we finished second or third. So they gave me a full-time deal for the next year.
Was that, how much of that was, I got to see if I can do it and I got to be in there? Or how much of it did you think, I've got these 4 or 5 things that I know I can bring to the table that should make us successful?
It was a little bit of both, but I'd say the biggest part was just for me. Like, I had to prove to myself, like, I wasn't going to be okay never getting a chance to do that. To, just to be, whether I fail or not, I need to at least go out there and give it a try. And I'd spent a lot of time, even growing up, I grew up in a middle-class family. Dad was a cop, mom was a nurse, and they said go to engineering school, and it was like a good, safe career, and you go work at ITW, and it's good, safe, and like I had that whole mentality of, just a good, safe career, take care of your family, that sort of thing. And when I went to work for Chris Hussey at RCR, he had said something along the lines of like, you look at people who make it big, and they either come from like, they were really poor and they just took a chance, or they were already wealthy. Like the middle class just stays comfortable. I was like, well, shit.
Yeah, it's always there's the I grew up much the same way. There's the fear of going down always outweighs what could be going up.
Yeah.
When you're down, it's like what are you gonna take? I can't be more poor.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, when you're already got wealth, you're like, yeah, you know what? Generations have come up to there, so if I come a tick down, I can make it again.
Yeah.
But the middle part is definitely always the most conservative.
Yeah.
It's that level of comfort, People seek that out. They just stay there.
Yeah. And like the crew chief deal, like, any crew chief and driver, it's got a lifespan, and eventually the driver, crew chief get sick of each other. Something like, if you become a crew chief, you pretty much know that at some point you're going to get fired from it. It's just, you're going to be the guy that gets blamed for it. So you kind of have to prepare yourself for that too.
He's got to fall on the sword, huh?
Yeah.
What in the pecking order of like the race team, where does the crew chief land? Is he like top dog, race director?
Yeah, top for that particular car number. So like above the crew chief, there's usually a competition director, and that person usually manages kind of NASCAR and some higher level, more on the business side and longer term decisions. But from the race to race, in the middle of the race or setup changes, the crew chief is the end all final decision maker on setup, race strategy, managing the driver, babysitting the driver, whatever it takes.
Head coach.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It is funny. I was thinking about this last night. Just thinking, preparing. It's funny how NASCAR itself, probably above most other racing bodies. I think, F1's probably done a good job of it, probably because of the TV show, because of the Netflix show. But Netflix in particular, NASCAR in particular, probably over the last 15 or 20 years has definitely made on the broadcasting side and what they're doing, where there's a crew chief, there's a pit crew, there's a driver, and there's a spotter. And they definitely promote all of those, whereas before it was kind of like, you might know, Gordon's crew chief.
Yeah.
But you didn't know other crew chiefs.
Yeah, we'd travel everywhere, and everybody'd ask, well, are you on the pit crew? How do I answer this? Not really, but what do you do? You're a crew chief. Oh, okay.
So I think it's very interesting that how I don't know if that's individual broadcasting, how they've done it, but they've done a really good job where you start to know the spotter, you start to know the driver, you start to know the crew chief. They show them, they talk about the name, they do little in-race interviews and stuff. So you start knowing that, and the driver obviously is important, but it's not always been that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. It's good and bad. They got to put a face with a name and know,
Yeah.
Especially when you're, as many crazy strategies have been played out in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. At least they could put a face to who's getting screamed at on the radio.
So you said 2016 all the way up to there. So you go through the COT, the car tomorrow?
So the car tomorrow, we started working on that. I think it was like 2000. It was like 2009, 10, in that time frame. Because I did a lot of testing on the road. I was Xfinity race engineer. I did started out when I did the race engineering at the beginning. I was on Clint Boyer's car, so we won the championship in 2008, and we started testing for the car tomorrow sometime around there.
Did you know instantly that this is going to be a turd?
You could, yeah. It's
What a failure.
yeah. It was bad. It's God, it was ugly too. It was,
You ever seen the car tomorrow?
No.
NASCAR?
the first ones with
shows
the
my little bit of knowledge.
with the wings on it, and
Yeah, this was when they.
This started in 2009.
I want to say it was somewhere around there for sure.
Which made it even more difficult when NASCAR talked about they're going to bring this new car coming out. Everybody's so skeptical of the last time, which I think the new car's great. It's got its. I'm sure you're going to have. You know way fucking more about it than me that watches on TV, obviously. But yeah, the car of tomorrow. It was almost like they. It's like somebody in the France family, like watched a rerun of what's the import show, like the movie. They've had 100 of them. Vin Diesel.
Oh, Fast and the Furious.
Fast and Furious. Then they watched it, Fast and Furious, like 5 years late. They're like, wings are cool.
Yeah.
we should do that in NASCAR.
Yeah, the biggest debate back then is they had like different end plates that you could put on there. Like that one's got, those were like the side force generating end plates. So it'd be like a wing turned sideways on a wing.
It's very tunerish
Yeah,
looking.
yeah,
It just sucked all the way around. The racing was horrible too in it.
yeah. It was pretty bad for a while. By the end of the car tomorrow, they got it a little bit better as they kind of got rid of the splitter, got rid of the wing, put the spoiler back on it, got a little bit closer, but.
That's the NASCAR trivia for today. So 2016 comes around. You're with Boyer then?
So 2016, I actually went and did one race. I was still in the engineering group, running the vehicle performance group, and we had designed a new chassis for the Cup side, and they wanted to test on the Xfinity side. So they sent me with Ty Dillon to Homestead with it, and we ended up running, I think we finished third that race with it. So that led into Ty Dillon was going to run a partial schedule in Xfinity the next year while he ran a full-time Cup schedule. So I got to crew chief his part-time Xfinity schedule. And I made it about a year through, or I made it through that year in 2017. And at the end of the year, Richard sat me down and said that engineers don't make good crew chiefs, and he was going to put me back in the engineering group. And so I asked if I could get on my contract and leave, and they pretty much told me if I found another crew chief job, I could leave. If not, I had to go work in engineering. So that's when I found a deal over at Penske, went to Penske's Xfinity program for a couple of years. And that lasted up until COVID. That kind of killed that whole program off.
So before we get into this next Trackhouse deal and where you're at now, have you found, especially you being a car guy and being an engineer for so long, have you found a difference from a crew chief standpoint working with a driver that's a car guy?
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest comparison I have of that, so I spent a couple of years with AJ Allmendinger on the 16, and he's not really a car guy. He loves driving them, but he's not working on them. He's not building them. Now working with Daniel Suárez, he is a big time car guy. His dad actually has a restoration shop down in Monterrey, Mexico. Like
They do all Volkswagens though. So like,
he started doing. He showed me it was a Chevy Apache that he did, and he said he doesn't do many of these anymore because he just lost his ass on them. Like, oh, I see that. I know how that works. So he sticks to the Volkswagens because
Suárez got some cool ass Volkswagens.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, some cool shit.
Down in Mexico, they're building them, huh?
Yeah.
yeah,
cool.
yeah. He'll build them at his dad's shop and ship them up here because it's obviously way more cost effective to do it that way. But he works on his own stuff. He's a legit car guy, and I've had to he's left our driver debrief meeting before and said, hey, Volkswagen threw the belt. Can you meet me? I have no tools with. So like I was at the GM Tech Center robbing tools out of some guy's toolbox to go fix the driver's Volkswagen bus on the side of the road. But he's, you know, sometimes that's harder too, because he understands cars and he understands that side, but he's not at the shop every day digging into the NASCAR Cup car like we are. So sometimes it helps because he has the basic fundamentals down, but sometimes it's nice to have somebody that just gets in the car and drives it and, you know, doesn't know any different. Everybody says Kyle Larson's kind of that way. He doesn't know anything about cars. He just knows how to drive them. And, you know, I think that's sometimes an advantage too.
Seems like a strange thing to get into if you're not a car guy.
Yeah, I've never figured out how like you could grow up, you know, because they all start racing when they're like 5.
Yeah.
You would think if your parents got you a go-kart at 5 and you were doing that there'd be a Camaro in your driveway at some point.
Some sort of history of like car enthusiasts in the family. Because what do you like transition from? I played t-ball and then I went to Little League and then I played a little basketball. And you know, it'd be a cool sport is like racing cars. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, you get guys get in it from karting side of things, and they never go to the building hot rods. It's like the race car the whole time. But if they're good at a young age, doing karts, they never turn a wrench. You know, you got a crew even at a young age doing that, and it's just the excitement is the driving and the competition part, and it never transitions over to I want to build something with a hopped up motor, drive around the street. You know, I'm not. Yeah. It is weird, but there's really no correlation because you can have very successful drivers that are just not, like you said, not car guys. You know, you got Junior is a fucking car guy. He's LS swapping S10s and was doing that at young and still building shit.
Yeah. Joey Logano has a ton of
Logano, and his dad's a huge hot rodder. That came down from his dad. Who did I just see the other day on Instagram? Older driver. Was it? It wasn't Kenny Wallace. It was, somebody's got, was it Mark Martin? Somebody's got this big bus.
It's probably Mark, I would say.
And I have to find it, and I'll tell Elliot to put it in. But he's got motor coach, right? Yeah. This thing is the most customized motor coach that I've ever seen. Like the whole motor's all chromed out. It's all hopped up. It makes like 1,400 horsepower. Really? He's doing like in-cabin tuning on it with the screen, and he shows the stuff. It's like all chrome. It's got it's polished. I think it's Mark Martin. This thing is bad ass. I've never seen anybody be such a hot rodder. They're like,
I've never seen anybody hot rod a bus. It's a coach.
It's like a Provost, like fucking done up right. I'm pretty sure it's Mark Martin.
Yeah, he keeps his stuff really clean too. I could see him with that.
So you got the guys that are like old school hot rod guys are still into doing stuff, but like you said, I mean, Kyle Larson, he doesn't need to be a hot rod guy. He doesn't need to be a car guy. No. Just do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's interesting. Like you said, maybe sometimes it is. You don't have any preconceived notions about what this other car that I built did or can turn or whatever it is. It's just about.
There's probably advantages and disadvantages both ways. You get a guy who really knows cars, and maybe he's giving you too much feedback. Yeah. And you get a guy who doesn't know anything about the mechanicals of a car, and you probably can't extract some feedback that you need. Is that sound right? Yeah,
there's definitely drivers out there that will. I've never worked on a team or worked with a driver like that because I wouldn't want to deal with it. But there's drivers out there they'll call the change from the seat. Like, all right, I need a softer front bar here, whatever. But I've always preferred a driver who, hey, what did we change 2 weeks ago that fixed when I had this issue? And we can look at all the data, we have all the numbers, and we can figure out what the best change is for that. So I've always preferred to be on that side. But it helps if the driver at least knows that there's a front bar in the car and, what your options are a little bit. So
what's the hardest part of the setup that is going to make it fast, but it's the thing that the driver's complaining about? And is it loose off?
Yes.
Where you're like, dude, just like fucking suck it up.
Just
Well,
drive,
they're faster.
Just drive the fucking car.
Yeah,
Man.
I mean, there's two sides of it. With the new next gen car, the one thing that we battle is just general ride quality. Because when the next gen car first came out, we're getting flat tires and we're getting stuck, so they shortened the shock length, so we wouldn't be sitting on the rub blocks anymore. Well, now that's kind of the limiting factor of travel, and you want to get the car as low as you can, so you're bouncing off these bump stops. So there's always a battle of how much ride quality issue can the driver take.
That's just driver fatigue after X amount of laps.
Well, at some of the tracks, it was to the point where like
Like,
blurry vision.
fucking their backs
like,
out.
No shit.
Yeah, yeah. We even at like road courses at Watkins Glen, they actually changed the bus stop for this year because the G loads they got G sensors in their mouthpieces for all the drivers. Not all the drivers, but some of the drivers were wearing them, and like the G loads they're seeing were like massive from not even crashing or going off track, from just hitting the curbs. So
There's zero suspension travel.
These are things I didn't know.
I didn't know
just, they just set them down on the bump stops.
I mean, you get there, and it's matter like you're not setting on all four corners, but a lot of times you're setting on the left rear on the straightaway, and depending on the track, for some places you might hit the fronts on braking, and but it's a challenge to see how low you can get it. And
So I always thought these were like sophisticated race cars. These are just go-karts, basically. No, like rigids, they're fucking go-karts.
I mean,
If there's no suspension moving, I mean, it's just like caster camber, right? It's
well, even if you go back to
narrow.
like if you go back to the early 2000s when we started coil binding and everything, it was the same way. We were just putting bigger fender, like, you know, you'd get a plenishing hammer out and bubble your fender out to get more travel and see what drug the ground next. You know, oil pan, sway bar, you know, take the sway bar tube, cut that out, move that up. Now the oil pan's the limiting factor.
Is this just for aero to get the car down on the track, or is it? What's the reason for not letting the car move?
These days, it's all aero based. So these cars have a diffuser in the back, so that has to be low to the ground. The weird part about the next gen cars, like you actually run the front kind of high because it's a flat pan car, and you're trying to get more air under the car to basically excite the diffuser in the back. So that's why the attitude of the cars look a little bit weird now, but you're still hitting.
They got a little Carolina squat too.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly. Yeah. But the other thing, you know, going back to like drivers complaining about one thing, and like drivers complain about loose. A lot of times loose is fast. And I'd worked for a lot of teams where a driver complains and you fix whatever he complains about. And I went to Penske, and I was at Phoenix, and Brad Keselowski was driving my car, and Geisler was sitting on the box with me, and Brad was complaining about, I'm loose, wrecking loose. And Travis looked at me, it's pretty fast. You don't have to fix it. I'm like, okay.
Yes. Set of special match tires.
Yeah.
Oh, I've we can talk off. I've always wondered on the driver side of things. Like you said, it's two sides of the story. They're in there. There's fucking hot, sweating. They're pissed off. They're doing the thing, and they're wanting the car to do a certain thing. I always wondered how many times of like, yeah, man, we put a full half round in it.
Yeah, just the placebo effect.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it from on a very entry level point. You know, we used to do a lot of autocross stuff and some road course stuff with the cars when we were doing like chassis development. And my brother, who's not here with us today, he's a hell of a wheelman, right? But you know, he's driving, and then he'd come back, he's giving me feedback, and it's like there's certain things that I already did to the car, and I'm like, I know that should work. Just shut the fuck up and drive the car. You know, it's got to take a lot of patience, and I guess being open-minded too, I suppose, because there's probably certain things that you do that should do this.
Yeah.
That maybe if they're not doing it, there's got to be a lot of trust, I suppose, back and forth between the driver and the crew chief.
Yeah, yeah. And now these days we've got a decent amount of data, so we can see the throttle, brake, steering of every car in the field. So that gets to be, a bit of a battle over the radio, because you'll see, all right, fast car's doing this, and so you relay to the driver, all right, he's opening up his entry a little bit more, he's getting back to the throttle here, and then you'll get the response, well, my car can't do that. So then, all right, what do you need for your car to be able to do that? And it's
that's what is cool on watching the races now that they have that much data, and the crew chiefs are given that, and there's even the spotters are giving it to the drivers, and like, hey, Joey's a half car lower on entry, stuff, and hearing back live of like, I don't know how the fuck he's doing it because my car won't do that. There's no fucking way.
Yeah.
So it adds a different dynamic of watching a race when you hear that and versus just being like, oh, he's driving harder. It takes that out of the thing of like, yeah, especially when I'm sure there's friendships amongst crew chiefs, inter-team and other teams where you're like, I know the fucking thing's set up the same fucking way, and look how fast he is. Shut the fuck up and grow some balls.
Yeah. Every race team gets to the point, like any race team that's struggling will get to the point at some point throughout the year where it's like, all right, you asked for it, you're getting his setup. It's on you. Like, good luck.
Now drive it.
Yeah. And sometimes that goes well, and sometimes, but it's, I don't know. There's a lot of just managing the driver, trying to, you got enough switches in the car, like, all right, it's building free. Turn your front brake fans off. Let the front tires build some pressure. Are they really going to build a whole lot of pressure? Not a whole lot, but flipping that switch might have helped them feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to it.
All in your head. Yeah. There's got to be a certain level of psychology. In the whole thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
The thing that I have not, I'm just too stupid. I don't understand.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, I know. We've said it 100 fucking times. Everybody knows I'm stupid.
I know what you're about to say, but go ahead.
I always get confused on pit strategy around gas mileage. And I get why a lot of teams, specifically as of late this year, on taking the gambles, right? Of some stuff and like, you know what, we're probably not going to finish any better than 20th. Yep. It's worth the gamble to do this. Is it just hoping for that caution of where, again, it's so fucking confusing. I know that you're going to be like, you're an idiot. It's so fucking easy. The gambling on the pit strategy stuff is nuts.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. So up until last year, most of the teams had messed with their fuel cells a little bit, and we had figured out where you can move your lift pumps and stagger the height on the lift pump so that you could you run on one pump. When that pump stopped picking up, you'd flip to the other pump, and you'd have a known amount of fuel in the box left to make it back around. NASCAR kind of got rid of that, so I'd say this year there's more teams struggling with that in general, and we're having to go a bit more old school.
Because you never are at a point where you have a known amount.
Yeah,
you're just doing calculations based on how much you.
Yeah, so you know how much you put in each time,
right?
And you know when it's full because you see it bubble up in the neck of the dump can. But you never know at any point in time how much he's using. But we do have throttle, trace, and RPM now, so we can estimate how much fuel burned from there. So if all the data's working and the internet doesn't go down throughout the race, which it does half the time, especially on a fuel mileage race.
Oh, really?
Because why wouldn't it?
Damn, fucking Comcast.
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
Yeah. But if all that's working, we can predict it pretty well.
I've seen that
at Indy this past week.
Yeah, that
like Indy, we had there's a new data feed and everybody's struggling with it. We weren't getting all the laps, so it was kind of fun because it was more old school. But that goes back to what position your team's in. Like I was in a position where we've already won a race, so I could pit and finish 25th. I could stay out, run out of gas and finish 25th, but have a 20% chance that it actually makes it.
Might make it. It's worth that gamble. I mean, you see it like we had Corey LaJoy on.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your thought. I really liked the guy, and it seems like pretty much everybody in NASCAR is like rooting for him to get his win. It seems like he's starting to piss some people off now a little bit lately.
A little bit.
He was the guy who everyone's like, oh, go Corey. Now it's like, oh, fuck Corey.
Yeah.
But probably a gorgeous head of hair.
He cut it off. He's got short hair now.
Yeah. That's probably why.
Hair.
That's probably why.
But you see that with them, and it's like you kind of want that to like the cards to fall, and you're like, I want to see him get his win.
Yeah, Yeah, and I know his crew chief used to work with me at Childress, and he plays a lot of those strategies, and I think he does that. Just you play enough of those, one of those is going to land, and you get dealt the right cards.
You keep betting on black.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it's going to hit.
You might lose a shit ton.
Yeah.
But eventually it's going to hit.
Yeah.
But the way NASCAR is now, they value a win so much. Like if it was the old point system and you could just be consistent and finish 5th every week, that'd be fine.
A win gets you in.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's worth it to take that gamble if you take enough of them. You
So you guys are in. Well, first of all, we got to get to Trackhouse. So I apologize. We started going in NASCAR. So tell me how you got to Trackhouse. Tell me about Trackhouse, because Trackhouse in itself is probably the most unique, mysterious, like that brand. Yeah. You guys came on. It was the first time I knew was like the Coliseum race.
Yeah.
Pitbull comes out, and Pitbull's he's part owner of Trackhouse, right? And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, where does this come from?
Yeah. So I was at Penske. COVID happened. They were shutting down. I was on the 12 Xfinity team, and they were kind of shutting that down. So they were going to move me back to another role in engineering. So I made another call again. I didn't want to go back to engineering. Made a call to RCR, and they had just a random spot for me. So I just went there and kind of hung out there. That led into I started working with Kaulig Racing for a couple of years. Did that with AJ Allmendinger for 2 years. And then when AJ wasn't going to drive the Cup car this year, started looking around, and the opportunity came to go to Trackhouse. And I'd known a little bit about Trackhouse from when Trackhouse first started. It was an in-house team. Like, they built their cars in RCR right next to the RCR cars. Like,
really?
Yeah. So Justin Marks started. He wanted it to be in Nashville, wanted to be a Nashville-based team, wanted to do everything different. He wants to find cool, entertaining ways to do it, just not status quo. But in order to get started and build a team, he basically contracted RCR, hired some employees, but they worked right next to the RCR people, used the RCR fab shop. So I kind of...
It was private labeling cars.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like that. And, you know, when I'd known Justin Marks a little bit as a race car driver, but didn't know him all that well, and really didn't fully understand how big his plans were. So when he started that, you know, RCR's always had these technical alliances that kind of come and go, small teams that come and pay for chassis and engineering support and whatnot. So I just figured it was kind of one of those deals. But then the news came out that he bought out Chip Ganassi and was taking over the whole thing. I was like, oh, wow. He became a key partner with the Chevy race teams at that point.
No, again, I'd love to be able to meet the man one day and love to have him on. And so no offense to this, but from his not super illustrious racing career to coming in with that type of gusto and fury, where you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
People took notice quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, I mean, it's still growing, and he's kind of got a little bit of like a Elon Musk mentality in that, if somebody always does it this way, all right, well, we're going to do it this other way, just to be different.
Just because,
you know. So whether it was putting these big video boards on the pit box, if you come to the track and walk behind the Trackhouse haulers, they're the first ones. I mean, we got plants out there and fancy tape. Like, it's more like you go to a sports car race and you see kind of that, you know. But it's all to cater to the sponsors and making it an experience. So, but it's that way with everything. Whatever we're doing at the shop, it's all right. What can we do? Let's not do it the way everybody else sets up race cars. Let's change how we do it. So, it's interesting. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I really like Suárez and Chastain. I like seemingly the mentality of Marks at Trackhouse and what they're doing. So it's somebody that it's cool. It's cool to meet you. It's cool hearing your story that you're there now too. And you like to see people like shaking things up and not just doing shit the same way. You go to their fucking website though, man. It's like they've got a go-kart track and race teams and like entertainment and concerts and like
MotoGP now.
It's fucking nuts. Yeah. It's absolutely fucking nuts.
That's what we need here.
We
step it up.
We'll start.
Yeah. Need some sponsors. Need sponsors.
We'll work our way to MotoGP. Yeah.
Well, how about being a Chicago guy and you got Michael Jordan out there?
Yeah.
What's that? Are you like rooting for him behind the scenes?
A little bit. I don't want to admit it, but like I've been in racing for 20 years. Like, you walk pit road and there's always celebrities there, and it doesn't faze me at all. But when that dude walks down pit road, it's like, I'm like,
It's pretty cool.
yeah, it's insane.
You remember that time? There
was like 5 seconds left, and they handed you the ball, and you fadeaway jumper. That was awesome.
I was up in the stands. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's like, who the fuck is
You want an autograph, kid, or what?
yeah, get the fuck out of here.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that's got to be a very interesting thing. I mean, I see videos and stuff. I mean, he's such an incredible dude.
Yeah, he's at the track quite a bit too. I figured, I thought he'd just kind of pitch in and not, but you see him there quite a bit.
I'm
it's
sure
awesome.
he doesn't
in it.
strike me as a guy that likes losing.
No.
He's in it. He's big time in it. I think everybody was surprised at the amount of races that he was at and how involved he was. Because he said he thought it was going to be kind of a figurehead thing and throw some money into it. But I mean, his dad was a huge NASCAR fan.
Yeah.
His dad watched NASCAR every Sunday, and they talked about it, and it was a thing. And again, like you said, he's able to be successful and strive to be successful, and he doesn't like losing. Something he's having a shit ton of fun at. Where I was going to get to the Jordan thing too, but I was going to go a different angle because I was going to go the
jumped ahead
Denny.
of you.
No, it's fine. That's the way it is. I was going to go the Denny.
No,
Hamlin
you go. Let's just
angle.
pretend I didn't say anything. No, you go
No,
ahead.
I wanted to
turn.
ask.
It's your turn now.
I wanted to ask about the Drive to Survive, or
Yeah,
what is the name of the Netflix deal on F1? Obviously, did a huge. I mean, everybody that's probably into F1 now is into F1 because of the absolute amazing documentary that they did. Before we get into like talking more about NASCAR, the Drive to Survive, I think Netflix did a great job with that deal with NASCAR. Was that Drive to Survive from Netflix a better historical, accurate documentary than Days of Thunder or Talladega Nights? Which out of those three?
Actual documentary, dude.
But
You're there.
I'm still like,
What kind of question is that?
I think Talladega Nights is probably more accurate.
I'm still pretty well convinced that the Cars movie is actually more accurate to NASCAR than both Days of Thunder or Talladega Nights. Like with the one where they got the simulators and the new, like,
Yeah.
Talladega Nights is an underrated, funny ass.
I mean, there's
movie
parts of that are actually really accurate. I mean, it's
The way the lifestyle of
the houses on Lake Norman, and
kind of
the wives, the whole deal. It's exactly.
It's so good.
That's why I could make the case that that's the most accurate out of all of them.
Yeah.
Is there any realism then to the? We talked about the driver to back up a little bit. This driver didn't know like nothing about cars. Any like realism to when Tom Cruise comes rolling in on his Harley, and she like knows not a thing. Just the gas is on the right.
Yeah, there's drivers that like that part is pretty accurate. I mean, there's drivers that show up like that. Like,
that's got to be tough to like. From a respect
We just
standpoint.
rewatched it.
We did. Yeah, I was over at his house and he turns it on, and it's a great movie.
It is a great.
You
It's
can't argue
been
that.
years.
Yeah,
yeah,
but as far as how like factual it is,
Well, events are based on true events, but
yeah, it's loosely like there's a lot of things like, man, that's very accurate, but then completely butchered how they did it. You know,
I never knew, which Josh brought up, was Hendrick's sponsorship within there. I didn't know that City Chevrolet was him.
a lot of the stories basically loosely based.
Yeah, and his fab shop built all that stuff. Like it was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
He's the one that got him. They literally filmed during a race.
Yeah.
A live race. They had a camera in a car during a fucking race.
That's
cool.
Only Hendrick could have convinced.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, dude, we'll hang at the
They're
back.
due for they're due for another NASCAR movie. I see they've got Brad Pitt coming out in an F1 movie, which so I think the last one was what? Driven with Stallone. I mean, they did like the Senna deal.
I mean, Cruz is like 75 years old and he just did Top Gun again, and they did a great job with that. So
The second one was better.
it was better.
you thinking we bring him back for Days of Thunder?
Why not?
Yeah, need to.
Why not?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you fuck with that one. Honestly,
do you
it's
mean?
like Dumb and Dumber 2. I mean, they did Top Gun and Justice, I'd say.
You're telling me that all of the great remakes that they've done as of late, you're telling me Roadhouse remake wasn't better than the first one? You're going to sit here.
That one fell a little short of.
What about Fall Guy?
Yeah, just
Fall
like
Guy was worse than Roadhouse. Fall Guy was worse
I
than
agree
Roadhouse.
because Roadhouse you expected, right? You're like, all right, it's Conor McGregor, not necessarily, but it was entertaining. You know, I'll give it that.
Both of those we watched.
Like I would watch Roadhouse
together.
again. Fall Guy, good grief.
Have you seen Fall Guy?
No, I mean I've seen like the show from way back.
So
when,
yeah,
but not
I
the
grew
movie.
up with that. So we watched it at my house again, our wives and him, and that's
The look on their
Could be.
faces was like, my wife was like legitimately pissed that you wasted our entire evening. I think she let you know.
I know.
She looked at you and was like, "This is what we did tonight."
We all knew it. It's literally probably one of the worst movies in the last 15 years.
Yeah,
It's
up there.
horrendous.
And I honestly, like, what was that movie that Ryan Gosling was
Barbie.
in? The fucking car movie.
Oh,
He was-
Driver?
Yeah, that was a cool movie.
Driver was good.
You know, so I had some sort of high hopes for it, but
Well,
Yeah.
back to the Netflix special. I think that they did a really great job. I know exactly what they were trying to do. They were trying to get some of those people that weren't historically NASCAR fans into it. I don't know if it did that. I think that NASCAR fans wanted to watch it. I love to be able to see the behind the scenes. I love to see stuff. I know that they did a great job because I almost every episode came away kind of liking Denny Hamlin. There was a little bit where you're like, man, he's not that bad. He's kind of cool. I still can't like him. I want to like him, but I just can't.
why is that? I don't know anything about him.
I've never met the man. I just don't like him.
it's fair.
He's every single thing he says and does, I should like.
Okay.
There's no reason why I shouldn't like it.
He's been easier to like, I think, since he's become an owner. I think because he's the absolute voice of reason on a lot of like.
I mean, his podcast is great. He calls it exactly like it is. I think he's definitely a different person now than he was 5 or 6 years ago. And I even in his pricky ways, I'm like I kind of like respect it, but then I don't know. I'm coming around. Around.
He's the guy that Jordan's in with.
Yeah, him and Jordan are partner. 2311. That's we saw the building the other day.
Did. Yeah, I mean, I got to trust Jordan's vision on that, though. Like, I'm behind him 100%. Jordan? Yeah, I'm a Jordan fucking fan.
If Jordan says he's good, then he's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, 90s Chicago kid. I mean, dude, that's it.
What have you've been in NASCAR for a long time. You saw old school NASCAR. You saw car tomorrow, try, crash and burn, fail. You've been through all kinds of shit, ups and lows. You saw the recession in 08. You saw COVID. You saw some of our greatest pass away. You're seeing the new car. You're seeing Netflix. What trajectory is NASCAR on in the last 3 years? Or post-COVID, what trajectory?
So the positive spin on it, I think, is that they're willing to try stuff. Like the races we've gone to, the things they're trying, like they're not afraid to shake it up. Where for the longest time, it was just pure tradition. This is how we always did it. This is how we're going to do it. So the new venues, trying to branch out, I think that's huge. Selfishly, the biggest challenge I think they have, and I don't think the average fan cares, but as the person working on it is, taking the cars away from the teams, like not having a fab shop working on this stuff. That's hard to swallow for sure. Like, but it creates a little bit more parity, so maybe these smaller teams can compete. We can, when I was at Kaulig, could barely win races if there wasn't this parity that was created. You can't start a team and just come up and go out and beat HMS. So there's benefits to it, but when I first got into the sport, the hand fabricated, just scamming the templates all you could, like no, hold the template this way and it fits type deal. It was cool to see, like absolute creativity. So that part missing is tough, I think. But, at the end of the day, I don't know that the average fan cares about that. That's probably just more the insider.
I'd like to know a little bit more about that and help. There's probably a lot of guys listening who have spent, their life buried in the shop working and have probably, never really watched a NASCAR race. I've watched NASCAR races, but, full disclosure, I'm not a NASCAR connoisseur. I didn't do a tremendous amount of research before this, which I never do because I like these to just
Don't
be
have to.
fucking conversations, right?
Yeah.
So fill me in. Help somebody who doesn't really know much about this shit. NASCAR's building the cars?
No, so we're building them. So, back in the day, it was, sheet metal just came off the rack, and you English wheel shaped it, and there were templates that you had to fit.
Okay.
But you would get to the point that the templates could be warped and could fit different ways, and the cars became, people would call them like the Twisted Sister shaped cars. They're shaped like a banana. The right front fender is way out, the right rear quarter panel is way out.
Okay.
And then the car tomorrow came, and you started getting some of the panels were stamped by the manufacturers. So Chevy would stamp the side panels for all the Chevrolet teams. So that took a little bit of away, but you were still working on fenders and shapes and everything. With the next gen car, you're purchasing panels, and it's a flange fit composite body. So you're bolting it together.
These like Zeus fastened on, or you're bolting?
They're actual,
like an actual.
Yeah.
panel?
So you're actually bolting them on. They have floating bushings basically, and you basically bolt each panel on. Okay. But there's a certain amount of movement you can do to, how we take up the tolerances. So there's when we go to the racetrack, you have, depending on what piece it is, you have a little bit more than plus or minus an eighth. It's plus or minus 150 in some of the panels that you can take up, so you can make some areas bigger and smaller. But you're just taking these pre-bought panels now and trying to just adjust, and like basically everything just gets pissed off and preloaded to get it to go where you want it to go. Okay. But it's like pushing a bubble around the car, because you push this big area here and it pops out over there, and that
affects the performance of the car.
So there's a shape we're shooting for, but we don't make any of the panels anymore.
Sure. So you can only fudge it so much.
Yeah. And then you get into quality control, and like every panel's not the same. So if you're at a bigger team, do you buy 400 panels and then put 300 off to the side that didn't match? So
got it.
So that's not the most fun when you're on my side of it. You're still trying to max out your car to what the rules are. NASCAR stepped up how they tech the car. So it used to be, a cutout steel template or aluminum template they'd put on the car.
That as after like 30 cars go in, they start like measuring it a different way and go through their late.
And now it's all basically laser scans. So they scan the floor and they scan the outer body with projectors and cameras.
Sure.
You're fucked.
Well, that we saw at Roush.
Yeah, they were doing that like setting up for the testing. It's like they were testing their own to see,
to make sure they're in leather, to get away with as much as you can get away with.
Yeah, exactly.
But all those systems that they came up with, we're going to get rid of templates.
Yep.
Well, then we'd push stuff around, get it how we want it, we'd go, and it would pass all their laser scans, and they'd say, well, this has to be flat.
You scanned it.
It passed, right? Well, now there's a template for that. So now we got both. So it's like, now we got templates and
double
laser.
check.
Yeah. So.
And God, I'm just baffled by that, because what are these cars doing? 180 miles an hour? 100?
Yeah, depending on the track, you're usually around.
So moving like pushing a fender gap out from the door, you're just disrupting the airflow over the car, and you're trying to loosen.
It depends on what part of the car. Like if you're looking at like a right rear quarter panel, the easiest way to think about it is you have a velocity of wind and you can affect the departure angle. So if that angle, if you can only get 3 degrees more angle, but you got 180 mile an hour wind shooting that way, there's a lot of force there that now can add some side force. So the tolerances have gotten a lot smaller, where we used to get a lot more and it was bigger forces in the wind tunnel. But now the competition's so close that all these little details stack up. And
so what prevents you from maybe taking a little die grinder, ovaling out one of those holes, you send it through to be scanned, and then right before it goes out on the racetrack, it's like a little, give it a little yank and a quarter turn. And, we could edit this out.
Right? There's definitely shenanigans that happen.
My mind's going there.
There's shenanigans that do happen that are very similar to that, but you can't have a part that they could hold post-race in their hand and say that you modified. Like there's already been teams that that was a hole before, and Back in the day, a Unibit was a great tool for a
you
lot.
just step that
Yeah,
sucker
what
up a
hole do you?
little
What size you want?
Okay.
There you are. But
Got it.
but now it's the biggest thing they got you on that. Like it's massive amounts of money and points now for modifying a single source supplier part. Like it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's
Now they get this
frowned upon a little bit.
creative other ways. Like that's why when you were asking that, yeah, there's still you're never going to take the creativity out. It's just going to push it to because they're still getting popped for it today.
Right.
Yeah.
With different
Always away.
Logano's gloves.
Yeah, the web gloves.
He had webbed gloves for he could basically block the air in the window. So when he's coming around, he basically moved his hand up there. And
So at super speedways, you want to block air from coming in the front of the A post,
Okay.
but you want the air to be able to go out back behind you at the B post. So all the drivers will put their left hand up to block in between the A post and the window net.
Huh.
Well, he just webbed his gloves in there to make it.
Oh, that's cool.
well,
And he probably would have got away with it, except for they weren't SFI approved. Like they're dead serious on all the fire safety stuff. So
you think that if they were SFI approved, he would have been okay.
they wouldn't have had a rule to go against it.
Found a loop.
So,
But they
so they're going to have webbed gloves.
It'd be one of those things where you would have it for a week till there was a rule. You'd
Right.
make a rule
They'd make
on
a
that. Yeah.
Hell, who was it? It was Hamlin last year that was on the too thick on the wrap, right? Or the
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. Yeah, there's wrap. Yeah, and there's been issues too, like
you're talking about wrap material thickness. There was
Yeah.
like too thick on. You're really splitting hairs there.
yeah,
But still nothing like the. I wish there would be a way, like you said, to the parody's fine because you do want guys to have a shot, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, not everybody can get a trophy.
yeah,
But if there's a way on like on the horsepower side of things to like keep that, sealed motors, whatever it is, but then allow the creativity of if you want to find a way to put, if you can put steel shot in the frame rails and get rid of it during a race and nobody finds it, then good for you.
yeah, yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, the most fun I had when I was on the engineering side was we designed front clips and like we decided, all right, we want the most dynamic tread width we could have, like widest, like a Pontiac Grand Prix, wider's better type deal. But when you go through tech, you have a tread width that you have to meet. So we design the whole front clip and suspension, everything just over wheel migration and like working through all that. And, how much does it matter? It's crumbs compared to everything else, but those were the things we were working on because we'd maxed everything else out. Now those projects are kind of taken away because you buy this front clip and you can bolt your control arms on here or here, and that's your choice.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm speaking over here like I'm innovative, like I'm just now thinking of this shit.
You're about to change NASCAR right here with this.
But like, what prevents a guy from? All right, they tack the car, but like you change tires. Somebody slides a little wheel spacer in there, you get a little more track width.
So there was.
I'm sure, like obviously, I'm not like this shit's probably every little trick has been done. I'm just the wheels are turning now.
Yeah. Well, you used to. I mean, I don't work on the side that has. So there's no wheel spacers on the Cup car, so I feel okay. But there would be days where you would intentionally fail being wide, and with sleight of hand end up adding wheel spacer when they thought you were taking wheel spacer off. Like it's definitely happened out there.
Dude, I think I could be a fucking crew chief. I'm thinking of all this. Yeah, I got it all figured out over here.
Yeah.
Oh man. So through all this, you're like, this is awesome. I'm getting to do the fun shit. I'm a crew chief. We got a win. We're going to the playoffs. I've always wanted to build hot rods.
Step one of that was probably in 2015, I started a real estate company on the side and tried to make enough money to actually support a hot rod shop.
Okay.
So you weren't kidding then.
I actually got into real estate because I figured if I was going to crew chief, I got to have something to fall back on because I could get fired any given Sunday. And so I started doing rental properties and whatnot. And the hot rod shop was always a dream of mine. Like even in high school, I took a business class and you had to write a business proposal. And I wrote a business proposal for a hot rod shop. And even in high school, I saw how bad of an idea that was. And so I never did it. But,
I'm sure teachers are super supportive of it too.
It's like, yeah. But so I started the real estate deal. And I think it was end of 2022, sometime around Thanksgiving, things slowed down on the racing side. And I just kind of Googled hot rod shops for sale. And there was a broker that had the shop in Charlotte for sale. And so I kind of followed along that path. And ended up not being in Charlotte. It's in Hickory, but to a broker, I guess Hickory and Charlotte are the same thing. But I ended up selling off 2 of my apartment buildings to fund the hot rod shop. But it'd been a dream from the get-go. Like it has all the creativity and all the cool stuff that I miss from racing. You know, I've actually hired a few people that I've worked with that were fabricators that, you know, kind of got shuffled out as the cars went to flange fit. And so it's cool to get to bring those people in and see their creativity and, you know, do it on a hot rod instead of a week in, week out race car.
Especially when there's no rules.
Exactly.
That's got to be wild from a guys that come from a creative nature.
Complete opposite.
Yeah.
And then wanting to do, and then coming in like, fuck, there ain't nobody that can tell us no. Hey, as long as the customer's cool with it, let's do it. This stuff's good. Really good, by the way.
Super good. Yeah, what was his name we had on here?
Bob.
Bobby?
Bobby.
No, seriously. The dude from Forget.
Yeah. Bob D. and D'Antonio. Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
It is good.
So hot rods, 0 restrictions, no rules, as much horsepower as you want, make it as wide as you want. The only restriction is that you've got to be able to get it in or on a trailer.
That hasn't been the restriction for you.
Oh, we just built a bigger trailer.
Right.
So still has to go on a trailer, right, at some point, or fit within a lane. Ride height, you know,
You've missed it on the trailer shit, what, fucking 4 times?
I didn't miss it. I knew it going into it, and I was prepared. I had built a fucking trailer to fit the car to get to SEMA. That was done. I bought the trailer beforehand.
The Legends trucks are like...
They fit.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to pull them in by yourself because you just chirp them against the inner fender and, you know, big sidewall. It's fine. It's perfect. But yeah, no restrictions. That's got to be like a totally different, like you've just like lifted this huge weight. You've taken the handcuffs off.
Yeah. And I've used it too, like trying to buy equipment because there's all these cup teams that have like, you're not going to English wheel a flange fit composite panel. So
that pole max is dead to you.
Yeah,
I need
exactly.
That.
So that's worked out pretty well. But it's, I'd say on the fabrication side, like they're doing all the same stuff they were doing, but they enjoy that they're not making like the Cup Series got to the point where like you would have a guy who he just made crush panels or I make the right front fender. That's what I do. So now you can basically come in and like, all right, today you're going to go work on that Dodge. And then, you know, next week you'll go work on this. And, you know, they like the...
How's the transition's been good for them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of the best employees I got are the ones that have come out of the Cup Series.
Do they just like the diversity of it? Like how different everything's a new challenge?
Yeah. I think that they come at it with, they're good at problem solving. So, you know, you kind of point them in the general direction and they can figure it out. You don't have to babysit them. It's not you don't have to write a whole procedure on how to do it. You basically present the problem to them and they'll work at it, figure it out. So it's
talking about employees. Something I'm interested in is from the NASCAR side of things, as long as you've been in that. I mean, race teams that's basically just one big, like, family from Alabama. It's just a bunch of cousins. Like every team. I mean, some of them are in the same parking lot. Some of them are across the street. You're so close. Mm-hmm. And then like the shop hopping that you get from a guy of like, well, this, you know, they do like cookouts on Saturdays. Y'all don't do cookouts.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys.
Yeah.
And are you seeing that in the hot rod shop side of things? And how have you always handled that on the race shop side of things?
So maybe I took this from the RCR side of things, but RCR is located 60 miles away from every other race shop. So it probably makes it harder to get people there. But once you get people there, if they buy a house up there, if they, if they're committed to it, they're kind of stuck there. Yeah. Okay. So maybe having the hot rod shop in Hickory, maybe that's a benefit for me. It's not necessarily, when I moved from Chicago to North Carolina, I chose to live in Winston-Salem, and that's where we still live. Which means it's 75 miles for me to go to Trackhouse one day in Concord and 75 miles for me to go to the hot rod shop the next day in Hickory. So it's like I'm not located conveniently.
What's your daily driver? What do you?
So I have a manufacturer's vehicle. So Chevy gives me a vehicle. Unfortunately, I changed teams so late this year that the previous crew chief had already spec'd out his manufactured vehicle. So I had to just basically take his over. So I got a Chevy Suburban, which is really nice. It's just a bit overkill for what
burning fuel.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind so I'm getting a Silverado next year just so I can throw junk in the back. And
that's a commute.
Yeah.
So what's the juggle like with obviously you're going to have a great manager at the hot rod shop side.
Yep.
What are you there? You're doing 3 days a week there?
So, my typical week, I guess we'll start with Friday, just because. So Friday morning, get up, fly out to whatever racetrack we're going to. We probably go through tech on Friday. Saturday we practice, qualify. Sunday we race, fly back, probably land in Statesville at 2 a.m. usually. Go home, get a couple hours sleep, shower, and I'll go straight to the hot rod shop on Monday. So Monday mornings I have till about noon or so at the hot rod shop. Then I go to all the driver debrief meetings down in Concord. And do all of the post-race activities. Tuesday and Wednesday are at Trackhouse, normal work, possibly load the car Wednesday. Sometimes we load Thursday, depends on where we're going. Thursday morning, Trackhouse until about noon when we load, and then back to the hot rod shop Thursday. So the hot rod shop's working 410s, so they work Monday through Thursday, so it works out pretty well that I can be there Monday morning, Thursday afternoon, so I kind of bookend the week for them. So kind of Monday, here's what we want to accomplish. Thursday, why didn't we accomplish what we had tried? What do we got? What do we got to do? And kind of set that plan. I'd like to be out there more, but it's.
I hope that the hot rod shop guys are listening right now and understanding. We've all had those parking lot conversations where the guy's like, man, fucking sucks, I got the guys in the shop and then like the phone's ringing, I gotta stay in there, but I gotta work on it. Like, think about what he's just said and what.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking about it, and the first thing that comes to mind, I'm like, dude, is it what's the trick? Is it like a shit ton of coffee or is it cocaine? Like how do you, like that? You gotta have some energy to do that. I mean, that's a big lift.
Yeah, I like being busy. It keeps me energized. I can't stand sitting still. Luckily, I can survive on not much sleep, so that's helped. But I enjoy going to the hot rod shop, so I look forward to those days. So it's not hard to get in the car and drive out there and check in on stuff and see the progress. And so it's a challenge, but I enjoy it.
Did when you bought it, did it have like projects in progress or built-in customers? Like, how'd that go?
Not very well, I guess. So, I went through a broker, and it was all, when I found this shop through the broker, it was turnkey. It's got employees that have been there 10 years. The owners are semi-retired, only show up half a day a week. And I'm thinking, I can show up half a day a week. That's easy. Like, I can come out there, I'll get the checks, I'll cash them. Like, I can do that. I'm your guy.
You'll be cashing the checks. You're just putting them in the bank instead of taking them out.
Yeah. So it sounded real, it had a 2-year waiting list to get in, all these employees, everything. And so it sounded great. Started going through the year-long process and SBA loans and selling my apartments to fund it and everything. And through all that, the guys who had been there for 10 years thought that they were purchasing it more with sweat equity than didn't have the money to do it. And so they spun off, started their own shop, left with pretty much no employees. through that process, most of the customers went there. So I ended up with basically, a building and a few employees that had been there less than a year. So it was like, all right, at that point, I probably should have just started from scratch.
Yeah.
I didn't get the full benefit I wanted.
Did you get any good tools at least?
I got some, but they weren't all to, like, I've spent a lot, like, upgrading the tools, which honestly is my favorite part anyway. And like, it's one of those things, like, I can lose money on the hot rod shop, and, if I didn't have a hot rod shop, the wife would question why I bought a Pull Max. Like,
sure.
where you put one? Yeah,
I need that.
But now it's like, it's a business, clearly. Like, it might make money. Who knows?
It seems like you have a legit hot rod shop, because I can tell by the comments and the sense
you
of
get
humor.
in there, and now, with the limited time you can spend there, I mean, now you've got to turn this into a business. It's got to stand on its own feet to some extent. So how do you start generating income? I mean, how are you bringing customers in? How are you staffing it? And you're only working there 2 days.
Yeah. So
essentially
we started out with, they had left when the other guys had left to start their own shop. They'd left behind some of the customers, but they were probably the customers that, were going to be more of a struggle to get across the finish line. So we had several of those that we had to work through, where it's, hey, we've got this guy to his budget. Like, he said he has this much money, and we're there. We got to figure out how to get that done. So we had a lot of that sort of work to finish up. But from there, it's mostly been like, try to make those customers happy, get them out the door, and hope that they go tell their buddy, like, hey, there's a new owner at this shop, and he helped me out get this thing finished. And sent, and it's been trickling in and building up, and we're finally getting to the point now where it's, getting enough cars in the shop isn't the issue. It's, it's just actually getting enough work done and making progress on everything. So, and it's taken a full year of getting the right employees in there and getting a group that I can trust there. And it's hard to, I don't know how you can interview somebody for 30 minutes and be like, yep, that's our guy. Like, it's, no matter how good the interview goes, he shows up, and a weekend you're like, what did I do?
Hot rod shop staffing is difficult. I mean, we've generally done like working interviews because I've been smoke showed over the years, but it's easy to put things on a resume, and there's oftentimes people, I think they're not even like truthful to themselves, that, they may have worked alongside somebody, and those pictures and that experience on their resume, it's like, when you take that person out of the mix and they've got to stand on their own, well, guess what? You really can't do that thing that you showed in the picture. Hot rod shop is very difficult, and it seems like I'm sure everybody listening to this knows it's a dying trade. I mean, how many guys? But realistically, I mean, how many young guys? We've been fortunate that we've got a couple rock star young dudes in the hot rod shop, but it's been years, since they signed on here, and it's a little worrisome out there.
I understand what you're saying. I agree. But is it truly a dying trade, or
the craft and the hobby isn't dying by any means, but the act of building them, I think, is.
Or is it just an overabundance of employment opportunities?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's not a crisis situation. I think, to your point, it's a little bit of both. You've got massive demand and slowly diminishing interest in getting into this industry.
Quite frankly, way too many shops.
And there's that too. Yeah.
Not saying that there's too many shops, but too many new shops. Too many.
You just said that.
I did. 100%. Yeah, 100% said it. I stand by my statement.
You walking it back? You walking that back?
It's the American dream is a great fucking thing. You never want to take that away. But I think the speed at which a lot of fabricators take that leap, and the reason why is sometimes misplaced.
Well, it's helped too, though, that, I mean, a lot of the cars in my shop right now are ones that we've rescued from another shop, where it's a stalled project or something that's derailed at another shop. And so, There's a ton of them out there that just
Yep.
can't get to the finish line with them.
Right.
I mean, North Carolina, I've always said to myself, made for years, like the labor pool there, it's got to be significantly better than what we see in the Chicagoland area. I mean, we've got guys that have relocated from all over the place, but you're pulling guys that the NASCAR industry is huge. So you've got guys that can stand behind an English wheel and shape a piece of metal that now they can no longer do that. So that's knowing how to move metal, how to shrink, stretch. Where else can you apply that? I mean, what are you going to go build, like restore fucking airplanes?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely
not. It's hot rods.
It's definitely helped, like in the short term, but like all that's going to die away soon too, because NASCAR doesn't have those people in there, and
right.
The best of the best in NASCAR saw the writing on the wall, and on the fabrication side, and they jumped ship early, and who knows where they ended up, but there's not nearly as many of them left.
We're going to do some standard questions. We're going to deviate a little bit. We're going to do standard, and then we're going to add some extra. So standard and extra questions. Are you following along?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty confusing.
Hey, crystal clear.
All right, good.
Yeah.
It's throwing you for a loop here.
Got it.
First off, non-standard, most fun infield NASCAR.
It'd be hard to not say Talladega.
Okay, yeah, that's where I was going.
Michigan will give it a run for the money. I
Really?
think. Yeah, Michigan's pretty crazy.
Where do they race in Michigan?
It's is it Brooklyn, Michigan?
Is it Brooklyn?
It's the Irish Hills, somewhere up there. Yeah, I went up there. That was the first NASCAR race I'd ever gone to as like a 12-year-old kid. And there was bonfires and people jumping the bonfires on dirt bikes and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's.
Well, fuck. Michigan thinks they're in the fucking South.
They do.
It's as redneck as it's the most redneck you'll
just
see.
south of Tennessee.
Yes,
We've touched on that a few. That will go down in history as a mystery to me. I just don't get that pocket. I know people have explained, and Whitey Morgan tried to explain it. Whitey Morgan said everybody came up, from the South to build cars, and so
possibly something to do with the glaciers. We don't know. Move.
It wasn't that far. It wasn't that long ago. We had Ice Age. Are we going to Talladega? We're going to go to the
You
the
keep
fall
talking
race.
about it. I've never been.
We're going to the Talladega race this year, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to make them go.
yeah, you got to.
Yeah. We're going to go.
We
I
were
don't care if
supposed
we
to go
tent.
to.
We
were
could
s-
tent camp it.
We were supposed to go to Chicago, and you were talking up a big game that you had pit passes and stuff, and you
Yeah.
got stood up.
I know. I get stood up. That was. Didn't come through.
Yeah.
But we also had some things come up, so wasn't the greatest of weekends.
Okay.
We were a bunch of different places.
Yeah. Yeah, we were.
Yeah. Actually, it was Jeff Clark from Roush.
Okay, yeah,
But had us pit passes.
yeah,
Yeah. 2 weeks beforehand.
yeah.
Hey, I got you taken care of. Like a week beforehand, I text him, hey, everything handled? No response. And like 3 days before, I was like, hey, man, I take it that we don't have anything. Not a big deal. No problem. No response. Well, I guess we don't have no fucking
Yeah.
passes.
I think he changed cell phone providers.
But
I'm guessing.
he changed.
Yeah,
Sometimes you can't transfer your phone number.
Well, I hope Jeff's listening.
I would assume because you would never stand a guy like you up. I wouldn't think.
I don't think he even knew who it was texting.
That was sent immediately to
like,
ignore.
man.
That was the button which you seldom press, which is ignore and report on the text message. That's like,
He's the one that reached out after the show. He's like, hey, man, I'd love to have you as a guest at Chicago. So I
that's-
texted him back. I was like, hey, this is what I would love to come.
that's the customary nice thing to say, though. It's
No,
like,
it's not the, hey, come. I got a new pool. Come over and swim sometime. I didn't just show up. Fuck you.
anyway.
We're doing Talladega. So I'm glad you chose Talladega. That's been the most
Yeah.
fun I've ever had. Bristol is a good fucking time. Camping
Yeah.
at Bristol is a good time. But next, favorite car movie.
I'd say it's a toss-up between Two-Lane Blacktop, American Graffiti,
This is my man.
but I
I knew you were gonna.
I also have to throw out Christine because I read the book and that one was.
Yeah.
Christine was a good
There's
movie.
part of me that still wants a 58 Plymouth.
Plymouth.
Yeah,
Was it Plymouth or Chrysler?
it was a Plymouth. Yeah, it was a Belvedere, I guess, or a Fury.
Okay.
Yeah, but in the book it was a 4-door, and which I definitely don't want a 4-door. But
2-lane blacktop.
yeah, it's a
2-lane blacktop. I think
phenomenal.
out of
It is.
all car movies, I think that's the most telling about a person.
yeah. I mean,
What does it tell you?
I'm not going there.
Well, I want to hear it because I'm a
You're-
2-lane
you're-
blacktop fan, big time.
A little hardcore and a little artsy.
What is artsy about that?
What's artsy about 2-lane blacktop?
Well-
the whole way it was filmed was extremely artsy.
But that's the thing you struggle through. Like the movie sucks.
it does.
Right?
It is
The
pretty
movie's
bad.
It's a terrible fucking movie.
It's pretty bad.
But you struggled through that strictly because of the car.
Yeah.
And James Taylor, he's
So
pretty
first
fucking
off,
cool. What?
I thought you were about to say he was a badass.
No, not a badass. He's pretty cool in a few scenes in it. And whoever the mechanic is, I don't know who that dude is, but
You're
he's
making a hell of a case for this movie.
the car, the setting. It's so fucking cool. Like you want to be there. You want that car. I'm still going to duplicate that car. I want that car. I don't think there's anything more badass, in my opinion, than that 2-lane blacktop 55. I mean, name it. Like what?
No, I just said it's badass and a little artsy. The fact that you sit through it, I get it. It's badass, but you have to be a little artsy to be able to sit through it.
I don't think so.
I do.
No, I think you have to be a diehard car
I don't think
guy.
so. I don't. I think there's a lot of diehard car guys that say,
No,
that
you,
ain't for me.
You look past that.
It's
And
basically
you wait for the
It's
scenes.
a black and white Charlie Chaplin silent
not
movie.
fucking black and white,
It's basically that way.
I see the comparison.
Okay,
Right?
dude.
Okay. It's out there, but I see it.
It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it says something.
At least you watch the whole movie, though. Like if you sit here and say Bullet, you know that you're not watching that whole
Yeah.
movie.
No.
But my son gets it. You know, he's 13 now. It's his favorite movie, and he just gets it because it hits you in the feels. Right? It's
does.
like listening to like Fortunate Son. So CCR comes on. It's like that fucking song. Or like Sweet Home Alabama. You know, it just hits you.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's 2-lane blacktop.
It wasn't a shot. I'm saying out of all things.
Well, it's coming. Hey, it's coming across.
Don't take it as a shot. No disrespect. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Probably just from my grandfather. Just anything worth doing is worth doing right. You know, just
That's good.
yeah. If you're gonna take the time to do it right, and no half-assing it.
Old school.
Yeah.
But that's good advice.
Biggest crybaby NASCAR driver. You don't have to. I'm gonna get somebody one day.
Has anybody fallen into your trap yet in 3 years?
I don't think so.
No.
They've gotten close, but I feel the only ones that have gotten close, I felt bad for because
give them the out?
I could see
Yeah.
them about to go down a horrible
Yeah, he
path.
hits them with
I'm
everything.
like,
It's
going-
like worst hot rod shop there is. Like worst
so
car
out
builder.
of all the parts that you've ever bought, what's the worst company that
Yeah.
you've ever dealt with?
Yeah, if you had to buy a chassis, what would be the best? And well, more importantly, which is the worst?
Shit, where was it going?
You're probably going to. We touched on the daily. I spilled the beans on that, so we can't guess. But
That's
we
the
got-
daily today.
right? But we got first car.
We've got first car.
Yeah.
First, you want to go first car now, or do you want to go favorite law enforcement interaction story first? Because it could give us a hint.
Well, he's from the south side, so it's probably a homicide.
Him and some buddies found a head in the woods. All right, we'll go car first,
Okay.
and then we'll go thing. All right, so 16 years old,
Yep.
you get your license.
Yep.
Did you go buy a car, or were you handed down a car?
Handed down a car. I think I was still 16. I might have been 17. I might not have had it right away.
What? You look pretty young. What?
Graduated high school in 99.
You're
Okay, yes. So you're
40,
just a couple of years
three-
older than
43.
the
43.
43.
Man.
99. So that means this. Think about this. What's riding? You should be all over this because this is your in Chicago in 96, 97. What's riding around south side of Chicago in 96?
Dude, I did not go. My parents wouldn't let me go to this. My dad grew up on the south side of Chicago, so you didn't go to the south side of Chicago as a suburban kid. Yeah, in the suburbs, that was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was. We
Okay.
called them prototypes. We joked. We
What
called
part of Chicago are we talking?
So it's a town called Garden Homes. It's in between Mount Greenwood and kind of Blue Island, Marinette Park, Alsip.
You know this. You know that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yep. I'll tell you. I mean, I'm just going to hit you with the thing that comes to mind. It's like late '80s Lincoln Continental, like town car. It's hand me down. Grandpa maybe had it. Dad had it.
Okay.
Four door.
Town car.
You see them out. I mean, you see that floating around Chicago. It's random, but that's
Town car 90.
It's just. It's not dead on with the year range, but it's just family car.
I don't know. This is a little pocket of the world
That you don't
that
know.
I just don't know.
Hey, you should go fuck around out there. Check it out.
I especially in the night. I just don't know this. I've learned a little bit about this northern suburbs, about the 90s there. I'm thinking GM front wheel drive, something like a Corsica, Beretta, Lumina, like something along those lines.
That's very cliche. That era.
That's what
a kid would get.
I'm
Beretta.
going, but 4-door. It's 4-door.
Okay.
So there's a Pontiac.
Like a Cavalier 4-door.
Cavalier. There's a Pontiac 6000, late 80s, early 90s. So this thing ain't like new.
Yeah, I like where you're going with it.
I'm going. It's an Oldsmobile. It's a front wheel drive Oldsmobile 4-door.
What's the model on that?
It would be a Cutlass Supreme, I think, in that. Not the traditional Cutlass Supreme.
Yeah.
This is when they went to the
Almost looked like
3600 GM motor, right?
It was like a future car, right? It had like a rounded nose on it.
No. Square. Like this is like
Okay.
if you draw a car, if you're a kid and you're
Got
like,
it.
draw a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
That.
Yeah. I know.
All right. So
We're probably
we fucked
way
that
off.
up so bad.
Way off on this one. But
So my grandfather left me a car,
Okay.
and I had the choice between the two cars he had in the garage.
okay.
One of them was 88 Oldsmobile front wheel drive Cutlass 4-door that I did not choose because I know better. So that's wrong. But
Damn.
the one I did choose, it's a 78 Chevy Caprice 4-door that he bought brand new. And I actually still own it.
Town
It
car.
is because that goes back 78.
Yeah,
that's the car you draw. That's
Yeah.
just an outline
Yeah.
of a.
Yeah, I still
What
got it
looks
to
like a
this
car.
day. Yeah. Except now it's got a LQ9 and a 6-speed and
Really?
a
Hell yeah.
sleeper, full sleeper.
Dang, that's a good one for
That's
like turbos.
Great
Yeah.
sleeper.
Yeah.
Did he really? It was really the other choice was the front wheel drive.
Yes, absolutely. An 88 Cutlass Calais.
Dude, I think to
People
be honest,
need- people
both of us are in the wheelhouse because
My-
you
my other-
park that car next to a 80s 4-door Continental. I mean, it's
Yeah.
similar.
That was
100%.
along the same lines.
I'm glad this is being recorded because there's not a lot of things that were like that dead on. That's fucking good.
That's
Impressive.
funny.
It's a talent.
You worked for that one, too.
I did. I did. I had.
Yeah, you worked for
Yeah.
What's the lady that used to come on late at night that you'd call up for the fortune?
the Tarot. Oh,
What was her name? Cleo, Madam Cleo.
yes.
I had to summon Madam Cleo for the final. Oh shit. All right. So we love this is Jeremy's favorite. He brought this to the table. It's now become one of my favorites. Everybody has them, especially if you're fucking cool. All the cool kids. Your favorite law enforcement interaction story. And feel free to tell multiple if there's more than one.
Yeah, I don't have anything that'll rival some of the other ones on the show, probably. But most of my family was in law
was a cop.
enforcement. Yeah, my dad was a cop, so he was Sergeant Swiderski, so that got me out of a lot of stuff for a while. There was one time in Michigan I got a speeding ticket, and the day of the court case, the officer bought me breakfast at McDonald's, and we walked in, and he said, defective equipment, and it was gone. But I guess that my favorite one, and I don't even know if it was really law enforcement, but so I had my Caprice, and I'd been working on it, so I bought a. Actually, I didn't buy. So my dad made a deal with me that if I got a college scholarship, he would buy any car I wanted. So obviously I had a Countach on the wall, and that's what I'm going to get. And then he said, he said, okay, but you're paying insurance, maintenance, and everything. So
Instead, he the engine out.
Yeah. So instead, I got my scholarship, and he got me a '85 S10 Blazer, 5-speed, 410 gear.
It's a cool little truck.
Yeah, and when I was in school in Michigan, we'd take it on there's off-road parks up there you can take it on, and it was box stock.
So
it did
4x4.
Yeah, and it didn't deserve to be on any. It had barely truck tires on it. I went to Pep Boys and they had a $30 tire special, and they're like, "Sir, that's car tires." I'm like, "I don't care. They fit. Put them on." But anyway, we'd go to these off-road parks, and it was small enough it would fit on the ATV trails and
2 tracks, right?
Yeah, you'd go through there, get stuck, and use a come along to winch it out. So it was rusted out, beat up. But anyway, I was back in Chicago, and we were hanging out in Blue Island. My buddy had a Camaro, and we were over by Memorial Park, and I had pretty much busted the front shocks off the S10 at this point from off-roading and not fixing it, and everything's rusted out. So if you put it in 4-low, jammed it in first gear, and just popped the clutch, it would lift the front tires off the ground and start bouncing. So my buddy pulls up next to me and starts playing some hip-hop music or something. And so I figure I'm just, I'll start bouncing the truck. And on one of the times I come down, and there's a flashlight with a gun drawn right in front of me. And I'm like, okay. And the cop came over.
Dad's a cop.
Yeah, I didn't even go there. I was out of my element at that point. And cop came over, and the cop was confused because he's like, "I know your truck. I've seen it. You got all that hydraulic, electric." I'm like,
"Can you help me?"
I don't have. I was like, "I don't have anything. It's just a beat up old truck." But basically got out of it because his squad car was supposedly on the other side of the park, whatever. But that was probably the best one.
Yeah, those are good ones. I grew up with a kid whose dad was a sheriff, and he'd fucking get out of everything.
Oh yeah, I was. You can get out of everything to a point, and then they just teach you a lesson, and it's worse.
Yeah, but it seems like it could go both ways.
Yeah.
They're either okay, oh yes, I know.
No, why don't you take care of that one for me and teach him a lesson? Go ahead and take him on in.
Yeah, we had one which this kid was driving, and there was a random DUI checkpoint where they shut the whole street down. Fortunately, we were kids. We were legitimately nobody was fucking drunk, but he was being a smart ass. And I remember being in the back seat and him just talking so much shit to the officer about
really?
Because his dad was a high up,
okay,
I don't know, sheriff something. But even at the time, I was like, "You're sounding like a bitch, dude."
It's not, you're not doing yourself any favors.
I don't know if they arrested him or they did something. He got a bunch of shit for it. Yeah.
I honestly figured there was going to be some type of motor coach, infield, late night race.
I think the cops probably stay away from the.
You're telling me y'all have never gotten pulled over for a concealed weapon? That's
fucking.
Yeah, it is. It's just exactly what happens.
They
fucking chick comes up and she's like, "Question is, will he use it?"
Yeah, Nicole Kidman fucking shows up and she's like.
That's a great movie. If anybody's listening right now, right, and young kid into cars like you were 14, 15 years old, you're like, "I'm thinking about doing a hot rod shop, but I'd also like to get into racing." Which one should they get into, and how do they go about doing it?
What is their motive?
Yeah.
Are they saying, I'm looking to I want a career, I want to raise a family, support a family?
Yes.
Or I want to chase my passion?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, if they want to support their family, then motorsports is probably okay. But yeah, I mean, if they have a passion for hot rods and creativity, it definitely have to be on the hot rod side. I mean, if you could get into NASCAR 20 years ago, it'd be the place to be. But it's definitely it's an engine. On the engineering side, it's okay. There's still some challenges there and some problem solving and interesting work to be done. But it's less and less every year. It's less and less that you can create something with your hands and actually take it to the racetrack.
At a certain point, is that going to have to come out of the OE's hands though and go back to the race teams?
Yeah, I mean,
guessing on what OE's focuses are.
Yeah, I mean, it's between NASCAR and the OEs on how they set up that distribution. I mean, it's to the point now that the OEs control the wind tunnel time. It's not even the teams anymore. Like, we used to control our own wind tunnel budgets, and we could decide, all right, this wind tunnel costs this much and this one costs this much. We can balance how much we go. And now it's each manufacturer is allowed this much wind tunnel time. So NASCAR and the OEs work together to try to balance all that from a cost perspective and performance perspective. But it would take one of the OEs to come in and really shake it up and say, all right, we want to let the teams have more control on that again.
If Chevy, Toyota, and Ford say we got 100 wind tunnel hours, and you've got 8 teams, do all 8 teams get equal time?
No. So the way it usually works is they'll have a development car, and we'll do a lot of development and wind tunnel mapping so that the aero map that we use for simulation tools is correct. That takes up a big chunk of that, and then they do development stuff on this kind of baseline car, and there'll be very little time that an actual race car gets into the tunnel these days. There's still some, but the more they chop it down, the less an actual from the racetrack car goes in, which creates issues because, the road crew mechanics and the race teams do things a little bit. Everybody has their own little tricks and ways that they do, whether it's sealing up a gap or, so
you're not ever testing the car that you did 5 little fuckeries with.
Exactly. And then you'll have cases where when they actually do it and it shows up different and everybody's wondering why it's different than the car that we've done all of our development work with. And is the development work valid because the results aren't the same?
What's the secret to fucking qualifying?
When you find out, let me know.
That's the time that it blows me away, different from watching a race, the discrepancies.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it now comes down, a lot of it is just driver prep at this point. Like, getting with your driver, showing them all the data, because we have a 20-minute practice, and then you have about 10 minutes to sit with your driver, go through all the data, make changes to the car, and also explain to them, all right, we expected that we fired off at this pace, but the track was green. Now it's got a little bit more rubber on it. We're going to make these changes, so your aero balance is going to change this much. We expect that you can make up your time, and you're going to make up your time on entry and exit, but your mid-corner speed is going to be the same. Like, working through that stuff, I think there's a lot there on just executing the details. Like, it's less about a perfect setup these days, because back in the day you had qualifying motors. You had a complete
3 different cars.
You would completely gut the car. You'd pull every hose, you'd swap to the light duty brake rotors. Everything would be lightweight so that you could put more ballast in the car. And now
but you'd be 25 or 30 mile an hour difference.
Yeah, and now
in qualifying car would be 30 mile an hour faster.
Yeah, now it's more, all right, we're gonna adjust the wedge, we're gonna adjust the heights for the aero balance, and then it's just execute your lap.
Reason I brought it up, watching, if you start getting qualifying, it's so crazy because you do have historical tracks of guys that are just good at that track, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got, especially in the OE side of things, of between short track, super speedway, some cars better, but you really don't ever know what you're going to get on qualifying day from top to bottom on drivers, from skill level to team size to money spent or whatever. It's like, it's fucking crazy. You really don't, back in the day, like you said, you'd be like, that he always qualifies good. Mm-hmm. He always qualifies. That's a fast car. You go to super speedway, DEI cars are going to be hot, whatever it is. Now, legitimately everybody has a chance to go fucking fast, depending on, how big their balls are and if it'll hang.
Yeah, and I think that's what NASCAR wanted. They wanted to put more in the driver's hands, which is great, and I think a lot of fans like it, but from the guy on the other side, it's like, well, I want more of it. Like, I want to be responsible for more of it.
Matt, it's been fucking awesome. Been a great time.
Before we let you go,
we got to go ahead.
Well, before we let you go, Squid's Rod Shop.
Where'd the name come from?
Okay, so my dad had one of my dad's bosses had a daughter who couldn't say Swiderski, and it became Squiderski, and then eventually became Squid. So, Squid has been a family nickname for quite a while. And for a long time he was Sergeant Squid and I was just Squid. So
Okay. Swiderski feels very Chicago.
yes,
to me.
yeah. Everybody
Swiderski.
thinks it's rare, and then you come up here and it's there's
it's like, I got a
Swiderski
buddy.
over
I
there.
got a
Yeah.
fucking buddy. His name's Matt Swiderski. Yeah, he lives over there in fucking Antioch. You know?
I bet you the lady that takes her ticket at O'Hare, she's probably a Swiderski. Deb. When you go into the long-term
Deb
parking.
Swiderski.
Welcome to O'Hare International.
Yeah, it's got a good Chicago. If you roll the Chicago accent on it, sounds good. Got it.
We got to do whiskey review because it's
Yeah.
that fucking good.
Dude, 4-8.
Slide it over. Let's see.
That's a banger. I mean, I'm shocked that, I'm shocked anybody brought that. That's a hell of a good bottle. So thank you.
Do you know much about Forgate?
A little bit. Yeah, not a lot. I'm probably more of a Scotch or vodka person than bourbon. Okay. But I like the bourbons that aren't too sweet. If they're really sweet, I
Got you.
Yeah, that's like a deep pull because that's like a connoisseur's kind of bourbon that wouldn't be something I think that your average person would flock to. But the Forgate stuff, he's a blender, right?
Yep. Yes, but their secret is
the barrels.
The barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one's split stave by Kelvin, minimum 7 years, barrel finished, Dearborn County straight rye whiskey finished in new French oak toasted and charred cask. Oh, and by the way, since all the green, this is full rye.
Yeah.
Full rye.
So if you remember, we had the small sample of that he brought.
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah,
he
yeah,
sent, and the Kelvin was, very flavorful.
Yep.
And that thing, it's like a cinnamon bomb,
It is.
It's got a lot of cinnamon. It's a fucking phenomenal bourbon. I'm not a rye guy, but the fact that I can just put down glass after glass of that is so smooth. It's not for your entry level bourbon drinker because it's got a little heat. I think Phil's not here, so I could say it without him busting my balls. It's for the more sophisticated palate.
It is.
Right? I'm gonna go like a 7.6.
I was going high. I was going 7.6, 7.7.
That's a fucking
It's
solid
a banger review. I thought even before I didn't know much about the brand and did a little bit of research before we had Bob on. And I thought that the barrel thing, like how they were talking about, was a little bit of like a gimmick. Like they've got to be onto something.
He
because
buys
it's so
crazy
different.
barrels from like all over the world. What was I'm trying to think of. My memory sucks.
It was the sherry, the one that was like 100 and something years
He
old.
was bringing like important barrels that were like centuries old. And then he blends the whiskey or the bourbon in it, and it just creates a
split stave
phenomenal
thing.
taste.
They'll like break the barrels down and then rebuild a new barrel with alternating staves. So you'll have different chars. Instead of just charring the inside of the barrel, they'll break them down, rebuild it. So you've got this level char in this wood, this level char in this wood.
It's interesting.
It's creativity and it's work because the shit's really, really that good.
I would say it's becoming a little bit more popular that you see it on the shelf periodically.
It's pricey shit. It's pricey shit.
Yeah, but anything with their name on it, grab it.
If you see Forgate, grab it. It's gonna be worth it. The split stave stuff is wildly impressive on the flavor.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is a heater.
Fucking awesome, Matt. It's been great. Chicago guy, NASCAR guy, hot rod guy, and I would have to say probably one of the gonna be one of the baddest 67 Vista Cruisers around.
Yeah.
I don't know how many.
Right, there's not a lot of them, so it's not saying a lot. But I have high hopes it's gonna be a cool ass ride.
cool.
We're gonna hang it at Talladega.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. I will actually get you pit passes if you.
Roush.
I'll answer your text.
Well, check them out. What's the Instagram?
Squid's Rod Shop and squidsrodshop.com. Pretty much anything on there.
And you gonna start posting some stuff on that Vista Cruiser?
Yeah. We'll be starting some metal work on that hopefully next week. So excited to get going on it.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for coming out, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for listening to Oil and Whiskey, an Ironclad original. See you again next week.